Good evening and thanks for joining us. Families across this country are devastated tonight. Their loved ones caught in a tumultuous and tragic series of events in Iran. This is all that remains of Ukraine International Airlines flight PS 752. All 176 people, at least 30 of them children, were killed when the Boeing 737 fell from the sky minutes after takeoff from Tehran Airport. It was not one of the grounded 737 MAX planes. Most of those on board were from Iran and from Canada. It went down just hours after Iran fired ballistic missiles onto U.S.-occupied bases in Iraq, a revenge attack against the U.S. for killing a top Iranian general. This video was shared by a state-run media organization in Iran. It says it shows the pre-dawn crash. The aircraft appears to be in flames, descending in the distance before a bright burst fills the sky. Almost immediately, Iran's transport ministry blamed engine failure. Ukraine's embassy in Iran put out a statement ruling out terrorism or a rocket attack, but that was later replaced by a statement saying it's too early to draw any conclusions. Iran is refusing to hand over the flight recorders to Boeing or to American officials. Among the 63 Canadians killed, many were from Edmonton. They were mothers, fathers, children. There were students and academics.
All had so much potential, so much life ahead of them. This is a heartbreaking tragedy.
We will have much more on all the lives lost a little bit later. Global Affairs Canada is now warning Canadian citizens against all non-essential travel to Iran. President Trump today addressed the nation. He didn't talk about the plane crash, but he did appear to back away from retaliating against Iran.
Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned.
We have coverage of all of this tonight, beginning with Redmond Shannon on the catastrophic final moments of that flight.
This is the immediate aftermath of the crash involving Ukraine International Airlines flight PS 752. And as dawn broke, the scene of devastation became clear. Smouldering wreckage of the Boeing 737-800, plane parts and personal belongings strewn across a large area, signs of the lives lost. It was clear to rescue workers no one stood a chance. All they could do was gather the remains of those who were alive just minutes earlier. When I arrived, the plane and passenger bodies had been shattered into many pieces, said this man. The only thing that the pilot managed to do was steer the plane toward a soccer field instead of a residential area. The aircraft was scheduled to fly from Tehran's Imam Khomeini Airport to Kiev, Ukraine. It took off just after 6 a.m. local time and climbed steadily to 8,000 feet before something catastrophic happened. There was no mayday call. The plane veered off course and hit the ground about 17 kilometers from the airport. 176 passengers and crew members died, 63 of whom were Canadian. Iran says in total 147 were Iranian, implying that a large number of the 63 Canadians were dual citizens. 138 passengers were booked on the later connecting flight from Kiev to Toronto. Ukrainian officials say 2 people who bought tickets didn't turn up for the flight. The airline says the Boeing was just over 3 years old and underwent maintenance 2 days ago. The company's president says it was one of their best aircraft with an excellent crew. Ukraine's embassy in Tehran initially blamed engine failure but has since retracted the statement. Just hours earlier, Iran had fired missiles at Iraqi air bases housing US troops. Fueling speculation, the plane was shot down. The answers could be held in the plane's black boxes, now in the hands of Iranian authorities. Iran says it won't hand them over to the US or to plane maker Boeing. Ukraine's Prime Minister says all Ukrainian airlines have been suspended from using Iranian airspace, and a number of major airlines, including Air Canada, are rerouting around the country. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Getting at the truth of what brought down that plane may not be straightforward. It happened in a country that's the sworn enemy of the U.S., a country that has no diplomatic relations with Canada, and where the media is state-controlled. Lies have been told before about plane crashes, including by the United States. Our Eric Sorensen explains more about that tonight. Eric?
Donna, the crash could simply be mechanical failure or human error. Most airline disasters are. But history, politics, and current events all inject skepticism around the major players. Iran, where the crash happened, the stunning coincidence just after Iranian missiles were fired at a U.S. base in Iraq. Iran has many enemies in the region, and it is far from transparent in its affairs. Ukraine has no conflict with Iran, but it does with Iran's ally, Russia, which was involved in the Malaysian jetliner shootdown 6 years ago. The United States is also at the center of tensions in the region, the back-and-forth attacks with Iran, and its own history includes shooting down an Iranian airliner 30 years ago. And then there is Boeing. After the crash of its second MAX 8 in Ethiopia last year, questions about its pilot training. This is a disaster with lots of questions and answers that may not be trusted.
The debris field suggests impact at high speed.
It looks like it must have hit and skipped along the ground as it was self-destructing.
Jock Williams is an aviation expert. He says early accounts can be unreliable. One report from Ukraine blamed engine failure. It then removed that statement. And the report that 2 ticketed passengers didn't board raises the potential for a terrorist attack. Williams says both the Iranian aviation and the Ukrainian airline are trustworthy.
I have no doubts about the airline itself. Aviation in general, believe me, Iran has a good record.
But as facts are gathered, will they be believed? With black boxes in hand, Iran has made clear U.S. safety experts, among the best in the world, will not be allowed in to investigate. U.S.-Iranian relations are on a knife's edge after an Iranian general was killed in an American attack days ago. Canada has aviation expertise but has no official diplomatic relations with Iran. And Ukraine well remembers this, the Malaysian airliner that was shot down in its conflict with Russia. Ukraine wants permission to send its own investigators to the crash scene.
We know that there's tension in that part of the world, particularly in the last few days, so we'll have to find out. But we got to really avoid jumping to conclusions about what happened.
Boeing's 737s are among the best planes in the world, but as an American company with recent crashes, it will be under intense scrutiny too. The Iranian crash is a tragedy for all involved, but the disaster comes at a time and in a place of grave mistrust. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.